Hey everybody, it's Pete. How's it going today? Thank you so much for joining me on the channel today, and thank you for being a regular subscriber. I really appreciate it. If you happen to find these videos helpful, definitely click down and subscribe. You'll get updates, both stock trading education, as we're going to do today, and stock picks. But today's episode is going to be a very different one and a little bit more of a deep dive. So we'll call this stock trading for beginners, but it's really kind of a core foundation that everybody needs to know, which is answering the question, how do I find the best stocks to buy right now? We're going to do the 2021 edition where we're going to dive in, and I'm actually going to take you behind the scenes into my actual stock watch for this week, and I'm going to walk you through how to get there, which I think is kind of exciting, because I think if you're watching this video right now, you have a burning desire to say, I want to go get some money out of the stock market, but maybe your timing is off. Maybe you're in the wrong stocks at the wrong time. Maybe you're actually in the wrong stocks, period. So I want to get something across very quickly right out of the gate. I don't trade penny stocks. I stay away from that. I like to trade market leaders. I like to trade the strongest sectors. I like to trade the stocks that have smart money influence, what I call the deep pockets. The deep pockets are moving those stocks and they become the leaders either for a few months, for a few years, however it happens to be. But I want to be where the smart money is. I just think that's an easier way to do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk from the charts through some scanning into some criteria, and then I'm going to show you my actual setup of what we do in the boot camp. And just as an aside, if you'd like to learn more about being in the boot camp with me, where you get my actual entries and exits, where I'll give you the best stocks that I'm trading right now, you can see on the ticker there, just scroll down below and you'll find out some more information about what's actually going on in the boot camp. You get everything. You get my entries, my exits, my training. If you want to take this a little bit deeper, there's no pressure. If you'd like to, fine. If not, we'll still be friends, right? So first and foremost, I'm going to pull up the screen for a second, and we're going to look at charts. So obviously, anytime we're looking at something we want to buy, we don't want to be the person who's buying it. This is a weekly chart where we're all this distance away, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks too late. We want to be the person that's looking to get involved at the right time. Now, a big part of trading is we have the big picture, we have the market. And we're not really going to talk about market analysis today, but we'll give you a very quick cut on that. It's a lot easier to see follow through, those kind of trades that take off right away when you're trading in the direction of the market, assuming the market is obvious. And that's really the first part. Is the market seeing buying order flow, which in my world, that means the smart money, the deep pockets are doing something obvious. And in a couple of minutes, we're actually going to talk about tape reading as well, because it's one thing to pick a side, it's another thing to pick the right spot. And we call that the optimal entry, right? What happens between entry and exit is really where the money's made. All of us, everybody watching this video right now, could get in at the same spot. We'll probably have thousands of different exits, and that's really where the magic happens. The magic happens between entry and exit. So you have the market, and let's just define the market for this video. We're talking about the S&P 500. We're talking about the Dow Jones Industrial Average. We're talking about the NASDAQ, and if you want, you can also throw the Russell 2000 in there. And you're watching to make sure that they're all doing the same thing. And a really big thing here that gets lost sometimes is why. Why are we watching that? And it really comes down to this. If you could imagine a tug of war where everybody's on the same side, all of that smart money is doing the same thing, that's kind of like everything is going in the same direction, and it's easier. Raise your hand if you ever placed a trade or you got into this loop where you're trading and like, oh, every trade you put on, it feels like a struggle. It feels like, oh, God, every single time it moves against me. Why can't I just get a trade that does exactly what I want? Well, that's two things. The first is to make sure that the market's obvious. Make sure that you're not buying too far from what we call the optimal entry point. And the second part, which is really important, which we're going to dive into in a second. And again, I'm going to show you behind the scenes into my actual setup. Actually, you know what? I'm going to show you that really quick right now, which is kind of cool, because this is going to be the where we're going with the video. And if you can see this here, this is actually how I break down stocks every single week for everybody in the boot camp. So every Sunday afternoon, I send out a new updated watch list, and you can see it's broken down by performance for the week, the month, the quarter. So what I'm actually looking for is the strongest stocks in the strongest sectors right now. And you can see it's broken down by the bigger sector, by the biggest industry. Then we break it down even further and go down into sector rotation. And you can see from week to week, we also do sector rotation. So that's kind of where we're headed right now. We're headed in that direction on this video, where we're going to be walking through how to achieve your own watch list. That's really the whole thing, because the whole point of what we want to get across right now is the best stocks to buy right now. So that's the first part. The first part is making sure the market's on your side at that moment. Now, this is a big part of trading. How long do you plan on hold the trade? How long are you going to be in it? Are you a day trader where you're looking for a trade for the next one day? Or are you a swing trader like I am, where I'm looking for the next 3 days to, let's say, even 3 months? Or are you an investor where it's a little bit longer time frame? That's going to influence the information that you're looking for and which stocks go in your list. So you just saw on the sheet that there's performance metrics of how stocks traded. So if I'm looking for the best stocks to buy right now, I want to know what now means. Am I a day trader or in those categories? But before that even happens, something needs to go into your scanner. And I'm actually going to show you the scanner that I use, and I talk about this all the time. It's the Finbis Scanner. So if we go back to the screen, you'll see here on Finbis, this is actually a, you can use the free service to do everything that we're about to do. But what I want to first walk you through is you need criteria. So before you put on any of these trades, before you look at anything, and this is my criteria, you might have different criteria. So if we just go into the normal screener, there's 7,800 stocks that pull up just like that. So out of every stock on Wall Street, but I want to tell you this right now. If you don't have an edge, if you don't have criteria, that means that every trade looks the same. And if every trade looks the same, you'll have no idea how to accept risk, how to set profit targets and all that kind of thing. My personal criteria is, as you can see here on the screen, a minimum of 2 million shares per month. Now, I'm a little bit more active trader. You possibly could drop that down to 1 million shares per month. That's average over the last 30 days. And an average of $1.50 average true range over the last 14 days. So what that means is average 2 million shares per day. What that does is that tells me that the smart money, the deep pockets, are active in that stock on a regular basis. And in trading terms, that's called liquidity. So liquidity means that if I want to get out of a trade or get into a trade, there's typically shares at every price, and I could get in or out relatively where I want to. So there's no surprise. Oh, I thought I was going to get out at $30 and I got filled at 29. Oh, that execution, that trade was bad. When you have liquidity, you can reasonably get out where you want. But the second part here, the average true range, is kind of really where the money is. The average true range is $1.50 from low to high on average minimum. So that means the stock might go from 20 to 21.50 or more on a regular basis. So that means that I have a chance to make money. So over 5 days, that might be $1.50 times 5 from low to high. That gives you the kind of criteria. Now, that's not really how I set my profit targets on swing trades, but it's the minimum criteria of what a stock can move. So this is where it gets really cool now. This is really where the scanning criteria really gets diving in. So if you can see here, I have my template, and my template has the criteria that I just went over: 1.5 for average true range, 2 million and stocks only. And you can see that brought it down to only 346 stocks. So what's kind of cool about that is we just, without even doing anything else, we narrowed all the way down to 346 stocks from 7,800. So now we're starting to dig a little bit deeper in the stocks that meet my personal criteria. So we said the first thing we do now is we would go over to the market and we'd be looking at the S&P 500 to see if that's in a trend. We'd be looking at the NASDAQ. So in this case, we'll just look at the Qs, right? We'd look at the Russell 2000. And then we'd also look at the Dow Jones. I just looked at all ETFs in that case. So we can get a clear sense that we're actually near all-time high. So the direction of the market is doing, quote unquote, what we'd want to see it doing. So the next step in finding the best stocks is we need to now go and find market leaders in the strongest sector. So if you remember what I just showed you in my spreadsheet, and we'll head back over to the spreadsheet right now, part of breaking down and finding the top stocks to trade right now is you need to go into the strongest sectors that are doing what the market is doing. And you can see there's 11 primary sectors in the market. And this is where they're actually broke down. So you can see last week, and you can see this was for the prior week's trading, energy stocks performed the best overall. So what I would do now is I would go into energy stocks, and I would be looking at the top energy stocks and then looking to drill down a little bit further to find the strongest stocks in that sector. Now, this is where we have to break it down even further. Now, this is important, okay? The sector is kind of like one section down from the big picture from the market. Now to find the best stocks, we go to the individual sectors, but the sectors are broad. So there's 11 broad sectors that we're looking at here, but then within those sectors are the industry groups. But here's the thing, remember what we said, we started out with the market. We started out, we want to find the easier trades. So once you have what the market's doing, then you look for sectors doing the same thing that the market's doing. And I want to show you something that I think is really important. Okay, so we're going to go right back over to take a look at the sector breakdown week by week, which is something you need to do, and it's really not that hard to do. This week over here, you can see the last week in January, all sectors were negative. What does that tell you? What does that tell you as somebody looking to take money out of the market? All of the sectors in that particular week, if you were a short-term active trader, you probably had a hard time making money that week. These are the little things that you need to pay attention to when you're looking for the best stocks to buy right now. You have to actually ask the question, which is why we started with the market as a whole. Like I'm doing like an inverse pyramid here, like the big picture first. If the market in general, if the individual sectors are performing poorly that week, you have to make a decision. Should you even be trading at all? That's a big deal. I know as active traders, we need to get in there. The market's open. We have to do something. That's bull. You only have to trade when money's kind of like sitting in the corner and you go and get it, which now you saw in that sector rotation, in that sector breakdown, the last 2 weeks of trading, getting back in. So you can see the date here, the first week of February. And then the second week of February, you can see that the market went from very tough to trade, where you're probably in cash trading a lot less risk on each trade, to where the market turned around. And what's really interesting here now, before this week even starts, look at the strength overall in the market, in the individual sectors, and look at how it's not as strong as it was last week. So when you're looking at individual stocks to buy right now, what is that telling you? Without even looking at anything else, what is that telling you? That tells you that the overall sector, despite the fact that the market pushed and punched into new all-time highs, what's kind of going on under the hood is not telling the same story. So now you're like, okay, the tide changed a little bit. So now I need to go in and find individual stocks and break them down even further, which is this. So sectors are now broken down by industry groups. So now you start to go down deeper into individual industry groups, and you look for if the market is kind of rolling over, maybe peaking out, which is going to be interesting to watch this. We're filming this kind of like in the middle of February 2021. It'd be kind of fun to go back to this video and see if that actually was a turning point where we are right now. Now you break it down by industry groups. So in the spreadsheet that I just showed you, you can see that we have it broken down. So now we would go individually into each one of those. Now, what's kind of important is this, and this is a critical thing to understand, which is this, okay? Once you have the right stocks, once you have the right industry groups, once you have the right liquidity, now this is what we call BEE. What happens between entry and exit is where the magic happens, and that's what we call tape reading. It's it's kind of like a very it's a wrongly identified. So in other words, you'll see a ticker on the bottom of CNBC just like this, for example, and be like, oh, that's tape reading. No, that's just the last quote. Tape reading is where you are buying as close to the optimal entry as possible. You actually have an idea where that profitable stock should move to, and you're combining what's going on with the market as well as the industry groups, just kind of like what we did. And if you think about what we just did, which that was completely unrehearsed, was kind of cool, because we looked first at the market and the market was going up. We looked at sector rotation over the last 3 weeks, which went from really weak to really strong to now pulling back a little bit, but the market's making all-time highs. So it's kind of like the car's still going forward, but you're not on the gas anymore, which is kind of cool, right? Then you break it down into those individual stocks within the stronger sectors. So again, if I go back to the watch list right now, and we take a look at the sector rotation from this week, you could see that I'd probably be looking at energy, technology, and basic materials and financial. So I'd only be looking at the ones that were stronger. So those are the sectors, and then you break them down a little bit deeper into other trading ideas, and you can see that there were 28 individual stocks. So now within that sector of technology, we break that down by performance for the week, which is how it's broken down already. And now you go and find the ideas that are as close to optimal entries as possible. So something like this Riot, which is a Bitcoin stock, has rallied quite a bit. It's actually more than doubled over the last couple of weeks, not even, maybe over the last week or so. So that's too far past the optimal entry. So remember, the title of the video, what we're talking about is the best stocks to buy now. So finding a stock, but being a buying opportunity now is not the same thing. So we'd be looking for something a little bit closer to the optimal buying point where it's not too far extended. And what does that mean? Okay, what does that mean? So what that means is prior to the trade, you need to have profit targets and then have a strategy for trailing it. So let's assume that you buy at the optimal entry. The market's moving in the direction you want. You look at individual sectors, you go down into the individual sectors, you find the market leaders. Then within those market leaders, you buy as close to the optimal entry point as possible. But now you need to accept risk. So if you want it to be a stock you're going to buy now you need to accept risk. So if you accept risk, that means you need to say, okay, if I buy here, it needs to go up to here at least for me to accept that risk. And that's a big part of trading that most people don't understand, that if you're going to put on a trade, you need to make a certain amount of money back to justify taking risk on that trade. And in common trading terminology, that's known as 3-to-1 risk reward ratio as a minimum. So what you have here, and what you see here is you have a profit target, and once it gets past and moves up to that profit target, then you actually now switch to a different strategy, which is a trailing stop loss strategy. So if you could imagine this, a stock, you know what, let's actually pull up a chart. Let's actually go right over into, we're going to take a look at that Goldman Sachs chart again, because that was kind of a fun example. So if we go over to Goldman Sachs, and let's actually use the recent earnings play as an example, because this is a real world scenario. So let's just say, for argument's sake, I'm actually going to put this in here so it's in the video so you can see it. And we're going to talk about 3-to-1 risk reward ratio. So I want that in the video. So this is what we're looking for on a trade as minimum, right? So Goldman Sachs ran into earnings. It had a nice rally into earnings. After earnings, it sold off a little bit. So a little bit of profit taking, kind of that, it's known as sell the news. So if you look to buy Goldman Sachs as it pulled back here, held above the breakout level, you would need a profit target. You need an area where the stock would need to move up to in order to put that trade on and say, you know what, I'm going to risk $2 to make $8. That's 4-to-1 risk reward. So if I buy this stock right now, that makes sense. I'm okay with risking 2 to make 8. So that's 4-to-1. So just for argument's sake, just for this conversation, let's say you bought it while it's down here. That would be your first profit target, as you can see on the screen. So you first need a profit target to justify the trade before you buy a stock now. Then as the trade is moving in your favor, so let's just say for argument's sake, it takes off and goes through here. Now you need a method for trailing this stock on the way down. And essentially the way you do that is you could use it to below the previous candle. You could use moving averages. There's dozens and dozens of ways of trailing a stock that moves down. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to recap very quickly. Okay. Everything that we do begins with criteria. So if you want to find the best stocks to buy right now, you need first to have criteria. For me, it's liquidity and volatility. So that means I can get in or out relatively where I want to, and it moves enough for me to make money. Next, there is looking for what the overall market's doing, as we just did, then breaking down into individual sectors. And I'll show you my spreadsheet again, just if you want to take some notes. Then from the sectors, they're broken down by industry groups. And within those industry groups, Then you go further and you look for market leaders. But this is the critical part here. Once you find industry groups and the leaders in that industry group, then you got to learn. You need to learn how to buy near the optimal entry. That is by far the biggest challenge that I see for people in the boot camp, is where they're coming in and they're chasing stocks. They're getting in too late. They're not buying near the optimal entry. They're putting the trade on. They're like, I did everything you said and I couldn't make any money. It's because you timed your entry incorrectly, which means you need to learn what the optimal entry looks like. Then breaking it down further, once you have the optimal entry, you need to do what we call setting up 3-to-1 risk-reward ratios. How do you do that? That's by setting profit targets before the trade. So what's kind of fun here is this is the process of breaking. Oh, actually, I said I wanted to show you the screen one more time so you can take some notes. So if we break that down a little further, and I'll show you what the full screen actually looks like. You could actually see, this is actually what we look at in the boot camp. This is the full breakdown. So we first have the breakdown of stocks and how they performed last week. So you can see the stock, the sector, and ultimately the industry group that they're in. Then we have a deeper sector rotation to find some other ideas. And what's kind of really cool here is looking at this compared to this, compared to this, and you can actually see that it's kind of rolling over a little bit there. So breaking that all down, this is really where it gets exciting, because now you're not fighting the market anymore. Now you're looking at the market and you are literally saying, I know exactly what I'm looking for. And if I can give you a quote from one of my oldest mentors way back in the day, he said, if it's hard to find, it's not there. So you saw 3 weeks ago, most of the market and most of the individual sectors were trading bearish. They were red. They were going down. So that's where, okay, I don't find anything. I'm just in cash. And we're just talking through, okay, setting up new ideas. But then the market bottomed out, turned around, and you saw that Goldman Sachs rally for a couple of weeks. So that's how you go from the market to industry groups to individual stocks, finding the market leaders, getting the optimal entry before you buy a stock now, and then getting to the point where you set up profit targets and you learn how to trail your trades. I just want to thank you so much for joining me today, because we do these kind of things every single day. If you'd like to learn how to do this with me every day, at least click down and see what's going on in the boot camp, because I walk everybody through this every day, every week. We talk about the trades every day before the market opens. We have a meeting and discuss, these stocks look great, these stocks, not so much. And we avoid those, and then we focus on the ones that are moving in the direction we want. So I hope you found this educational. And look, some of these videos are 5 minutes, some of them are 15 minutes. But let me ask you something. This is a serious situation, the market, right? If you want to make the stock market make you money, you have to watch the video. You have to take notes. You have to ask questions, which, by the way, please click down and subscribe if you find this helpful. But more importantly, I'd like to help you. Either get involved with me in the boot camp. It's only a 30-day commitment, no subscription or anything like that. But if you just have questions you want to ask about what we talked about in this video, leave a comment below, and I'll be more than happy to get back to you as soon as I can. And if you found it helpful, definitely give us a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate that too. So have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me, and let me know how I can help you. That's really the biggest thing.